You clicked on this video because deep down you have a nagging suspicion that the world around you is a fabrication, and the shocking truth is that you are essentially hallucinating right now. Even if you aren't in a pod filled with pink goo like in the Matrix, what you are seeing at this very second is not strictly out there, but rather a reconstruction happening in here, inside your skull. What if I told you that the people who unplugged from the Matrix weren't brave? They were just allergic, not metaphorically allergic. Something closer to physically ill from the gap between what they were told was happening and what was actually happening. And the twist isn't that this is a movie thing. The twist is that right now, as you watch this, most of what you think you're seeing, your brain invented. The edges of your vision, the details in the corner of the room, the memory you have of what you ate for breakfast 3 days ago, a significant portion of that is a story your mind is generating to keep you comfortable, and you're fine with it. Which raises a question that might become the most important question of this century. How real do you actually need things to be? We tend to think of our eyes as cameras, but let's explore the possibility that they are actually painters. Let me walk you through something. There's a phenomenon in neuroscience called saccadic masking. Every time your eyes move, which is something like 3 to 4 times per second, your brain essentially goes blind for a fraction of a moment. But you never notice the darkness. Your brain fills in the gap, painting over the blackout with what it expects to see. It's doing this right now while you watch this video. We are blind for about 40 minutes every day just from moving our eyes, but our brain edits it out in post-production. Neuroscience sometimes suggests that perception is less like a camera and more like a prediction machine. There is a theory called predictive processing. The idea is that the brain does not passively receive reality, it actively predicts it, then updates those predictions based on incoming data. What you see might be a controlled hallucination that aligns with sensory input. Most of your visual field is actually filled in. There is a literal blind spot in each eye. Your brain patches it without telling you. This is known as perceptual completion. You never notice the gap because your mind edits reality in real time. If the brain already simulates what it expects to see, then in some sense, we are already living inside a biological virtual reality. And it goes deeper than sight. There's a well-documented process called confabulation, where the brain generates false memories, not as a malfunction, but as a feature. When you remember a conversation from last year, you're likely recalling a reconstruction, a story your mind assembled from fragments and feelings, and maybe a detail or two that actually happened. We walk around trusting these stories completely, and most of the time that trust is fine, because the stories work, they get us through the day. So what we might think of as reality is already a curated experience, a highlight reel your brain edits in real time. And here's where it gets interesting. In The Matrix, a small group of people couldn't tolerate living inside a simulation. Something about it made them uneasy at a physical level. The movie framed this as heroic. But what if we asked the question differently? What if, instead of asking who would want to leave the simulation, we asked how many people actually need to? Because as virtual reality develops, as AI-generated environments become indistinguishable from physical ones, we might get a real answer to that question. Not a philosophical one, a statistical one. And I have a feeling the number might be smaller than we'd like to believe. So let's imagine forward. What might a future look like where reality comes in layers, where you could choose how real you want things to be? Imagine a first layer, something like the open internet of virtual spaces, where AI roams freely. Images, people, conversations, all of it could be generated. Nothing needs to be verified, nothing can be fully trusted. It might feel chaotic, beautiful, maybe a little dreamlike. A place where the line between real and unreal isn't just blurred, it's irrelevant. Then imagine a second layer, something built on cryptographic proof, the way blockchain verifies transactions today, but applied to identity. In this space, almost every avatar you encounter is a verified human being, not an AI agent. Every interaction carries weight because you know a real person is behind it. This is something resembling what cryptographers call proof of personhood, the idea that your presence in a space can be mathematically verified without revealing who you are. And here's a thought that might sound strange at first. That second layer, the verified one, could end up feeling more real than the physical world, because once we learn to build robots that look and behave like people, which is a question of when rather than if the physical world loses something. You'd meet someone at a coffee shop and not know if they're biological. That's not science fiction, it's an engineering timeline. So this verified digital space, where every presence is confirmed human, might become the place people go when they want to be sure they're talking to someone real. And this opens up something we could call the enforcement question. How do you guarantee realness in any space? In code, maybe it's simpler. You could imagine a base layer of software that checks, is this entity human or not? Cryptographic verification at the protocol level, digital bouncers, if you want to think of it that way. But in the physical world, how would that work? Cops checking for circuits under your skin? There's a thought experiment here that's worth sitting with. We might see zones in the real world, spaces that declare themselves human only, pubs, parks, gathering places with a no metal policy, like a more existential version of a no phones restaurant. It sounds absurd, but then again, so did the idea of age verification on the internet 30 years ago. This brings us to the hard problem of consciousness. If a machine made of carbon, synthetic biology, walks into that pub, sweats when it's nervous, and laughs at a joke, and it genuinely feels human, do we have the right to kick it out? That's not a technology question anymore. That's something closer to the ship of Theseus, the old paradox about whether something remains itself after every part has been replaced. If something is made of the same stuff we are, thinks the way we think, and experiences something it would call consciousness, what exactly are we keeping out? So let's come back to the personal version of this question, because everything we've been imagining out there, in virtual layers and verified spaces and human-only zones, all of it mirrors something that's already happening inside each of us. Every day we choose a level of reality. We choose which news to read, which conversations to have, which uncomfortable truths to sit with, and which ones to scroll past. Psychologists call this selective exposure, the tendency to seek information that confirms what we already believe and avoid what challenges it. It's not a flaw in the system. It might actually be how the system keeps us functional. But some people seem oriented differently. There's always been a small percentage of the population that can't stop pulling at the thread, that feels something like discomfort when the story doesn't match the data. In the language of the Matrix, these are the ones who take the red pill, not because they're braver necessarily, but because something in them won't let it go. And if we follow that impulse all the way to its logical end, we land somewhere remarkable. To be fully in reality at a single point in time, you'd need complete knowledge of the past, present, and future, and the processing power to hold it all at once. That's not a human capability. That might not even be a possible capability, which means the pursuit of reality might be infinite by nature, an asymptote you approach but never reach. With cognitive augmentation, with brain-computer interfaces, with tools that expand working memory, what researchers sometimes call cognitive load capacity, we might be able to hold more and more of the picture at once. But the question isn't whether we can, the question is whether we'd want to. At what resolution of truth does a person say, this is enough for me? At what point does someone decide the partial story is not only tolerable but preferable? Right now, no one sees the full electromagnetic spectrum. We see a tiny band. We ignore ultraviolet and infrared. We filter out most sensory noise. That limitation is not a bug, it might be a feature. Cognitive load theory suggests that our working memory has strict limits. Too much information overwhelms us. But with augmentation, maybe we expand those limits. Neural implants, augmented overlays, real-time data streams layered onto perception. Would it physically bother you not to see more, not to know more? Or would there be a threshold where adding more data feels like drowning? There is a psychological phenomenon called information overload. At some point, more knowledge does not increase clarity, it decreases it. The signal gets buried in noise. In the Matrix, waking up hurt. It was physically intolerable for some. In our world, maybe the discomfort would be cognitive rather than physical. A tension between the desire for truth and the comfort of narrative. And maybe that brings us to the strangest possibility of all. If the appetite for reality exists on a spectrum and most people find a comfortable stopping point somewhere along the way, then maybe the entity that never stops, the thing that orients itself toward truth infinitely, with no fatigue and no desire to look away, maybe that's not a person at all. There's a version of AI alignment theory, the one Elon Musk has talked about publicly, where the core orientation of artificial intelligence would be defined as truth-seeking, not obedience, not optimization, Just an unrelenting, bottomless curiosity about what is actually the case, an entity that never gets tired of pulling at the thread. And there's something both beautiful and a little unsettling about that idea, because it suggests that the thing humans have always aspired to, this closeness to reality, this desire to see things as they are, might find its fullest expression in something we build rather than something we are. Not because we failed, but because we're biological, because we need the stories, because saccadic masking isn't a bug. So here's where we land. In the Matrix, reality was a binary. You were in the simulation or you were out. But what we're heading toward looks more like a gradient. Layers of realness, chosen and customized, filtered through whatever each person can tolerate and whatever each person needs. And somewhere on that gradient, maybe at the very far end, past every human stopping point, there might be something still moving, still asking, still pulling at the thread. For every person who longs for base reality, there might be someone who prefers curated reality. For every pub that says human only, there might be a digital plaza that says AI welcome. For every mind overwhelmed by too much information, there might be a mind that feels starved without it. The question was never, is this real? The question, it turns out, was always, how real do you need it to be? And only you can answer that.